when the United States Armed Forces enters Korea in 1950. The 1st Provisional Marine Brigade holds the line at the Battle of Pusan. The battle marks the debut of Marine helicopters in combat, with Marine Observation Squadron 6 flying the HO-3S-1 helicopter. At the Battle of Incheon, General Douglas MacArthur calls on the ground and air forces of the Marines to make an amphibious landing. The operation is a success, and U.S. and UN forces are able to devastate the North Korean lines and send the enemy forces into retreat near the Yalu River. During the Korean War, former guerrilla commander Lieutenant Colonel Russell W. Volkman and other World War II veterans of commando action in the Philippines worked to establish a manual for unconventional warfare and employ the tactics in the current conflict. This manual, titled The Organization and Conduct of Guerrilla Warfare, sets down many of the lessons learned during the irregular and unusual units and operations developed during the Second World War, and anticipates the integration of new technologies and tactics. The great dependence of a modern war machine upon industrial and economic production makes it increasingly vulnerable to attacks directed at these supporting factors and vital lines of communications. A future war, waged with highly mobile forces and supported by scientific and mechanical means of tremendous destructive potential, will lead to dispersion of forces, fluid battlefronts, and widespread isolated actions, a setting that is ideal for guerrilla warfare in its broadest aspects. In spite of technical developments, man remains the most important element to use against a modern war machine and its essential supporting resources. Guerrilla warfare, using traditional principles as well as new methods and means, will play an increasingly important role in modern warfare.
The next 4 years are going to be difficult and challenging years for us all. The election may have been a close one, but I think that there is general agreement by all of our citizens that a supreme national effort will be needed in the years ahead to move this country safely through the 1960s.
During and after the Korean War, Lieutenant Colonel Russell Volkman and other Army personnel used their wartime experience to develop a doctrine of unconventional warfare. These guidelines are traced not only through the Korean War, but also from earlier units, such as the Alamo Scouts and Philippine guerrillas during World War II, even drawing inspiration from as far back as the tactics used by Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, during the American Revolution. The United States Army officially establishes their special forces with the creation of the 10th Special Forces Group, Airborne. The Army also establishes the Psychological Warfare School, later renamed the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center and School. Army Special Forces soldiers have operated throughout the globe since their inception, seeing action in Vietnam in the 60s and 70s, training the Salvadorian military in El Salvador in the early 80s, monitoring drug trafficking and terrorism in Colombia in the late 80s, the Persian Gulf War, and through to today's War on Terror. Army Special Forces are commonly known as Green Berets. The headdress that became their signifying distinction is adopted unofficially by the Army Special Forces in 1954, as the organization searches for headgear that would set them apart from other units. In 1961, President Kennedy authorizes their use especially for the U.S. Army Special Forces. In the same speech that John F. Kennedy promises to deliver a man to the moon, he also outlines a proposal to form what will eventually become the United States Navy SEALs program.
The present crisis in Southeast Asia, on which the Vice President has made a valuable report, the rising threat of communism in Latin America, the increased arms traffic in Africa, and all the new pressures on every nation found on the map by tracing your fingers along the borders of the communist bloc in Asia and the Middle East all make clear the dimension of our needs. In addition, our special forces and unconventional warfare units will be increased and reoriented. Throughout the service, new emphasis must be placed on the special skills and languages which are required to work with local populations.
Over $100 million go into developing the Navy Sea, Air, and Land Team, or Navy SEALs. The force traces its beginning back to the closing years of World War II, when the U.S. Navy Scouts and Raiders School is founded. Graduates of the program, including the father of Naval Special Warfare, Phil H. Bucklew, provide amphibious support in the landings at Sicily, Normandy, and southern France during the war. With Kennedy's call for a development of a new kind of naval unit in 1961, one that will engage in combat diving, demolitions, and guerrilla and anti-guerrilla tactics, 2 teams of SEALs are established, one on each coast of the United States. The teams are utilized in secret anti-communist operations in Cuba, and by 1962, the Navy SEALs are at work in Vietnam. The SEALs are initially stationed in Da Nang, where they train Vietnamese commandos with the unconventional and inestimable skills they themselves have attained. The combat they enter into with the Viet Cong is direct. Rather than firing upon the enemy from a distance, the SEALs work within inches of their combatants. The men with green faces, as the Viet Cong call them because of their camouflage face paint, become a force to be reckoned with, extremely effective in anti-guerrilla and guerrilla operations, and taking from the Viet Cong what was previously safe territory for the enemy.
I am directing the Secretary of Defense to expand rapidly and substantially, in cooperation with our allies, the orientation of existing forces for the conduct of non-nuclear war, paramilitary operations, and sublimited or unconventional wars.
The Navy SEALs still operate today, under extreme secrecy and on more dangerous missions than ever. On May 2, 2011, SEAL Team 6 successfully completes its mission to kill Osama bin Laden, the terrorist leader and head of Al-Qaeda responsible for planning the attacks on the United States on September 11, 2001, after a decade-long manhunt as part of the War on Terror. While many Special Forces teams have their direct origins in World War II and the Korean War, one conflict will prove to be their ultimate testing ground: Vietnam. From about 1955 until 1975, the United States sends troops from every branch of the military, ostensibly to end the fighting between North and South Vietnam, but with the ultimate goal of squashing communism. The North Vietnamese gained support of the Viet Cong, or National Liberation Front, a guerrilla army fighting with little regard for traditional tactics. As the conflict in Vietnam evolves, the need for specially trained soldiers makes itself more than apparent.
With 450,000 U.S. troops now in Vietnam, it is time that Congress decided whether or not to declare a state of war exists with North Vietnam.
In global conflict and the War on Terror, the soldiers required to defend freedom throughout the world need highly specialized and focused training. Rather than numbers, what the Special Forces always strive for in their training and their operation is quality over quantity.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to help us produce more compelling historical content like this, please like, comment below, and share this video with fellow history buffs. And of course, be sure to subscribe to help keep history happening.